My name is Claire. This happened in 2016. I was 19 years old at the time. I was up late the night before into the early morning studying, and I hadn't had much sleep. So I had just woken up from a nap and decided to hop in the shower to wake myself up. That's when I heard this weird scraping sound coming from somewhere outside. I stopped the shower, peered out from behind the curtain, and then made my way over to the window. I saw nothing, but I could still hear the noise. I thought it may have been my neighbor working in a shed, so I ignored the disturbance and finished up in the shower. Before I continue, I should explain that I have severe anxiety and often get a little paranoid. It doesn't help that I also have PTSD. Anyway, I was now back in my room and sat down on my bed. I texted my boyfriend at the time and asked him what he wanted for dinner. While I waited for him to respond, I relaxed and scrolled through social media. I was reading an article about the recent clown sightings that were happening at the time when I was interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside. I froze and listened carefully. A few more steps followed, then a tapping noise. I was confused. It hadn't yet occurred to me that I might have an unwelcome guest outside. I wondered why my boyfriend hadn't knocked on the door or called before showing up. We had a routine. He would always text, call, or video chat me to let me know when he was coming home or when he was at the door. There had been a lot of shady activity in our neighborhood recently, so this routine was important. I called out his name, but everything went silent. I texted him and asked if he was at the door. No reply. I decided to peek through the bedroom window. As I made my way across the room, my phone rang. It was him, wanting to video chat. When I answered, he said he was about 15 minutes away. As I talked to him, I pulled back the curtains of my bedroom window, and all the blood in my veins turned to ice. Right outside, staring back at me, was a clown. A real clown, smiling through the glass. After the initial shock, I actually laughed, thinking it had to be some kind of prank my boyfriend was pulling on me. I played along, pretending to be terrified, whispering into the phone, "Very funny. Love the whole scary clown thing." I chuckled and rolled my eyes. But my boyfriend was confused. I explained about the clown at the window and told him he and his friends had done a good job scaring me. He swore all his friends were at the pub with him and insisted he wasn't part of any prank. My stomach dropped. I looked back at the window. The clown was still there, grinning. Then he reached into his costume and pulled out what looked like a butcher's knife. My body froze. I grabbed a baseball bat from beside my bed. My boyfriend yelled that he was only a few minutes away now and told me to lock all doors and windows. I quickly closed the curtains and ran into the lounge. Soon I heard a loud pounding on the front door. A creepy voice called out, "Let me in, child." I didn't answer. I stood still, heart pounding. The door rattled on its hinges as the clown pounded again. The doorknob shook violently. My fear was growing, but so was my anger. I shouted back, "Go away! Leave me alone!" A muffled laugh followed. The voice returned, even creepier. "Please let me in, doll. I just want to play. I want to play with your insides." My patience snapped. I was about to storm outside and confront him when I heard my boyfriend, still on the phone, yell, "Hang up and call the cops!" I hesitated, then realized he was right. Facing a clown with a butcher's knife wasn't the best idea. I called the police, explaining the situation as I walked back toward my room. That's when I heard glass shatter. I froze. I told the dispatcher I thought the clown had broken in. The dispatcher told me to get somewhere safe. Suddenly, I heard my boyfriend's voice outside shouting, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? Get out of here. The police are coming." The clown let out a psychotic laugh and ran off. I rushed back to the bedroom, and that's when I noticed movement outside again. Through a small gap in the curtains, I saw another clown, this one holding a saw blade. My body locked up. I couldn't move or scream. My fear deepened as I realized my boyfriend was out there with not one but two clowns. I screamed into the phone, begging him to hurry. After what felt like forever, I heard him at the back door. I let him in quickly, and we clung to each other until the police arrived. They took our statements and found a rusted hacksaw and an axe on the ground outside my bedroom window. There were red stains on them. The clowns, of course, were nowhere to be found. After that night, I struggled to fall asleep. I often wonder what would have happened if I had been foolish enough to open the door. Were they just thrill-seekers trying to scare a girl home alone? Or were they truly out for blood? A few months later, my grandparents passed away within weeks of each other, leaving their old house empty. At first, the family discussed renting it out, but its poor condition made that impossible. With no consensus, it was left to decay. Years later, while going through my mother's things with my aunt, we came across a family photo album. In one picture, I saw myself as a baby with my mother, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. My aunt explained it was the old family home. No one had been there in over a decade, and she wasn't even sure if it was still standing. I begged her to take me there. After some hesitation, she agreed. The next morning, we drove 30 miles through cornfields to a gravel road. At the top of the hill, I gasped. Despite being run down, the house was breathtaking. In its prime, it must have been the finest in the county. We parked near it, got out, and looked around. The once vibrant paint was faded, the porch sagged, and the grounds were overgrown. Yet the house still carried a haunting beauty. We entered through the back. Immediately, a terrible odor hit us, but we brushed it off as the smell of a sealed house. Inside, everything looked like a time capsule. My grandmother's belongings were untouched, the furniture covered in dust. Even the lights still worked, though dimly. I later learned my mother had quietly kept the utilities paid all these years, hoping someone might return. We wandered room to room, taking in the old furnishings. I couldn't understand why no one had told me about the place. Despite our estrangements, I would have helped care for it. My mother's strange ways had always kept her distant from me, but the neglect still shocked me. Upstairs, the smell grew stronger. I wanted to cut the visit short, but curiosity pulled me toward a closed door. I opened it slightly. A wave of stench slapped me in the face. On the bed was not an animal, but a human body. Bloated, unrecognizable, curled up in silence. My knees buckled. I stumbled away and shouted for my aunt. She peeked in and immediately pulled back, horrified. Together, we ran downstairs, where the smell was weaker, and called the police. When the officers arrived, they searched the room and came back with a piece of paper and a license. They sat us down and asked questions about my mother. My chest tightened. The officer looked grim. He told us the body appeared to be hers. I refused to believe it until he handed me her license. My world collapsed. My aunt and I clung to each other, sobbing. After giving us a moment, the officer handed me a note. It was from her. In it, she confessed to years of depression, worsened by our estrangements. Our last argument had pushed her past the edge. She returned to the old house, unsure at first, but its condition broke her completely. Her final words begged me not to blame myself and ended with a simple, heartbreaking goodbye. Weeks later, once the grief had settled, I gathered the family. I proposed we restore the house to turn our tragedy into something meaningful. They agreed. It took time, but by spring of 2018, the Wheeler house was reborn. I led the first tour myself. It was a bittersweet day. My mother should have been there with me. Despite everything, it was her dream that made it possible. Years later, another event burned itself into my memory. I was 20 then in 2005. My father had been diagnosed with lung cancer, and we were devastated. He had given me his rifle years earlier, and I decided to take it on a solo hunting trip to clear my mind. I set up camp near the borderlands. The first day was uneventful. That night, lying by my truck and staring at the stars, I heard footsteps in the brush. My instinct screamed danger. I rolled aside just in time to see muzzle flashes. Bullets ripped into the dirt where I had been lying. I dove behind my truck, pulling the small pistol strapped to my ankle. Shots shattered my truck window. I returned fire blindly, heart pounding. After a tense silence, I heard multiple sets of footsteps fleeing into the darkness. I stayed under the truck all night, my pistol aimed at the trees. When dawn came, I packed up fast and left. Later, a friend told me the area was being used by cartel groups to smuggle goods and people. If I hadn't moved, I might not have lived to tell the story. Even now, I can't shake what happened in my apartment not long after. I lived in a gated complex in the city. It was considered safe, but security was loose. That night, I went to bed late, only to be awakened by a strange clicking sound. At first, I thought it was upstairs neighbors. Then I realized it was coming from my front door. Someone was trying to unlock it. I grabbed my pistol from the safe and aimed at the door. The lock clicked open, but the deadbolt held. I peered through the peephole. 3 strangers stood outside, 2 men and a woman, all in hoodies. The men held objects I couldn't identify. The woman kept repeating something loudly in another language, over and over, including an apartment number that didn't even exist in the complex. I jammed the door with a broom handle, making a loud thud to show I was there. They froze, then fled down the hall. I debated calling the police, but waited until the next day to report it. Nothing came of it. Still, I can't forget how the deadbolt was the only thing between me and those strangers. I was prepared to do what was necessary. And though I'll never know their intentions, I am proud of how calm I remained, ready to face the unthinkable.